Good afternoon. We are going to be talking about parallel and perpendicular lines today. Alright, so looking at the definitions we have here, parallel lines, if two lines have the same slope but different y-intercepts, then they are parallel. And you can see this, how they won't ever touch. That means they'll be parallel. Perpendicular lines, those are lines whose slopes are opposite reciprocals. What that means is that you flip the fraction and change the sign. That's when you have a perpendicular line. Vertical lines and horizontal lines are perpendicular. So if you think about the x and y axis, that is an example of perpendicular lines. What is the slope for these parallel and perpendicular lines? Okay, so for parallel lines, we just talked about same slope. Okay, so looking at the first one. Okay, same slope for parallel. So given that the slope is 3, to have the slope of a line that's parallel would also have a 3 as the slope. Okay? Now, perpendicular means that it's got to be a fraction, so we're going to put our 3 over a 1. And so the opposite reciprocal. So reciprocal means you flip the fraction, and opposite means you take the opposite sign. So parallel, meaning same slope, would be 3, and perpendicular would be -1/3. Okay? So, looking at the second one. Parallel, same exact slope, so the slope is not going to change for parallel. For perpendicular, first you have to change the sign. So instead of it being negative, we're going to have a positive number, and flip your fraction. Do the reciprocal. So +3/2 would be the perpendicular slope. Okay. Determine the slopes of the lines that are parallel to and perpendicular to the graph of the equation. Okay. So looking at our equation here, first we need to identify the slope. So it's in slope-intercept form. So the coefficient of x is going to be my slope. Is 1/2. So parallel just means it's going to be the same slope. Perpendicular means first we have to change the sign, so since it's positive, it'll be negative, and then we flip the fraction. So instead of 1/2, it'll be 2 over 1. You don't have to leave it -2 over 1, you can just say -2 if you'd like. Alright, so looking at this one, we need to find the slopes of the lines that are parallel and perpendicular to the graph of this equation. But it is not in slope-intercept form. So we have to, first of all, we have to put it in slope-intercept form. So the first thing, we have to isolate our term that has y in it. So we need to subtract 3x from both sides. -2y is equal to -3x plus 12. And then we're going to divide by -2 to isolate our y. When we divide by -2, we have to divide all the terms on the right side of our equation by -2. And don't forget your signs. So on the left side, the -2's will cancel out, and we'll have y equals negative 3 divided by negative 2. The negatives will cancel each other. So we'll have 3/2 x, and then 12 divided by negative 2 is going to give me a -6. Now, what do we care about? We are only paying attention to the slope right now, right? And the slope is 3/2. So parallel would remain the same. So 3/2. Perpendicular, we change the sign, so we'll have negative, and then we flip the fraction to give us negative 2/3. Alright. Now, here it's asking, determine whether the graphs of each pair of equations are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So for parallel, we need to remember it has to be the same slope. Okay? For perpendicular, the opposite reciprocal. And if it's not the same, or if it's not the opposite reciprocal, then it's not going to be parallel or perpendicular. It'll be neither of the two. Okay? So looking at our slope here, 3/4 and negative 3/4. They're not the same, so we know it's not parallel. They are opposite signs, but the fractions are not reciprocals, so they're not perpendicular. So this one is neither. Okay? Now looking at this, we have to put it in slope-intercept form first. So I'm going to rewrite it right over here. So we'll have 2x. Oh no. Give me just a minute. Okay. 2x minus 5y, and that's supposed to say equals 10. Okay, so first I need to subtract 2x, then I'll have negative 5y equals negative 2x plus 10, negative 5. So we get y is equal to, the negatives are going to cancel, and 10 divided by negative 5 is going to be negative 2. Okay, so looking at what we have here, our slope is 2/5 in the equation we had to manipulate, and 5/2 in the other. They are not the same, so we know they're not parallel. They are reciprocals, but they're not opposite signs. So again, they are neither. Alright, we're done with parallel and perpendicular, guys. Have a great day.